So glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. If you were with us yesterday, you know that Jim Geraghty is going to be away for a while, and here in his place today, happy to welcome in Craig Collins.
Hey!
How you doing, Craig?
Nice. Thrilled to be on this side of it, Greg. Thrilled to be here with you.
Exactly. For longtime listeners, faithful listeners, you know that Craig has subbed for me on the Three Martini Lunch in the past. So today, he gets to try Jim's side of the ledger. And
I'm terrified.
You've also heard Craig fill in for great Radio America hosts like
Yes.
Dana Lash and Chad Benson and others. And I believe you and Chad are now the only ones to do both roles on this podcast. So congratulations. Awesome. You're an elite company. So.
I actually am trying to mirror Chad's career. Anything I can do to eventually be Chad Benson is what I want to be. So that's awesome.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we got so much to talk about today. We're going to have a lot to say about young people, young adults, and there was obviously a big shift in the electorate last year, particularly among young men, shifting right. But a couple issues we're going to talk about today, including where young people get their news from, at least nearly half of them on a regular basis. We'll also talk about the young lefties who are insistent that they can actually make communism work this time. That is a growing belief on the young left, and hopefully we can nip it in the bud, but it might be too late until they have to learn the hard way. But we start with today's meeting down in Quantico, Virginia, where Secretary of War now, not Secretary of Defense, but Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth summoned all the military top brass. President Trump addressed them as well. But Hegseth, I think, is the one who actually made the news today. He said a number of things that he's said before, including, the woke era is over. The dudes with the dresses, the worship of climate change, all that's done. He also said we need to have everybody in shape. We're going to have tougher basic training. And oh, by the way, and he said this, you fat generals and admirals walking the halls of the Pentagon, completely unacceptable. I'm going to make you guys do PT tests too, so you guys need to be in shape. I'm sure that will go over swimmingly there. But then there's a couple things which he's mentioned before, but he says are actually going to be implemented now, and I think this is good for our military, because we had seen sliding standards especially between men and women. They were not seeing the same standards in a number of different ways, and so he says now there's going to be one standard, and if you make it, great. If you can't, well, that's just the way it goes.
This, and I want to be very clear about this, this is not about preventing women from serving. We very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it. That is not the intent, but it could be the result, so be it. It will also mean that weak men won't qualify, because we're not playing games. This is combat. This is life or death.
And then he also said the era is over for tying the hands of our warriors through stupid rules of engagement.
We unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters. That's all I ever wanted as a platoon leader.
So, Craig, you already got some lefties on Twitter going, this is what stops war crimes. He's basically advocating for war crimes. But if you talk to guys who are in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam, they'll say, we weren't allowed to shoot at the enemy unless they shot at us. Just things that put our guys at risk and basically make us less likely to complete the task at hand. And so if there are common sense rules of engagement changes coming and elite standards for everyone across the board, I think that's good for our military.
Yeah, I think it has to be good for our military. First and foremost, I think it's interesting that he's now the Secretary of War, because he sounds like it, right? The rhetoric, the difference in how you communicate, it definitely sounds more than a Secretary of Defense. This guy is focused on, Hegseth is focused on how and what we do when we're in combat to make our troops safer, to make ourselves more successful, to make things easier. So that's easy. The women stuff is the interesting thing to me, because Hegseth for a while now has been assumed to be a sexist, simply because he said the thing out loud. that a lot of people are uncomfortable saying. The thing that, say, comedians Bill Burr are very good at saying when they joke about how certain sports are not as popular if women play them as men because capabilities are different. So I think it's interesting to finally hear that said out loud and to see the badasses that actually pass it. If I want to be somewhat lefty in my response to this, which I never want to be, by the way, Greg, but I'll try really quickly. The best response to their complaint is just watch how awesome the women are who can fulfill this requirement, who can do the same things that the guys need to do in order to be part of the military, and who can engage in those combat roles because they'll be as effective as them as anyone else. Let's watch for that. If there aren't any, whoopsie. But if there are some, let's go ahead and praise them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there have been so many different political things forced on the military over the years.
Yes.
First of all, after the Cold War, the Clintons come in, and the funding is way down, and the military shrinks. Then, of course, 9/11 hits, and we probably shouldn't have done that. And we got to build it back up. And then, the rules of engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan creep in, and then all of a sudden DEI creeps in, and all of a sudden the military looks a lot different than it did kind of in the early 90s, right at the end of the Cold War. And that's what Hegseth is essentially trying to move back to, especially when it comes to the qualification test for different combat roles.
Well, and the most interesting thing about engaging in this conversation with civilians and not with people who've actually done this is that whole rules of engagement conversation. Because if you talk to anybody that served in Afghanistan or Iraq, they will tell you that their lives were constantly in danger for incredibly stupid reasons, that they had to wait to be fired on instead of firing on an enemy if they saw an enemy coming toward them. And that's an oversimplified version of one. But there were a lot of things like that where the military would say, these men and women, that our lives were being risked because of some stupid set of rules that we've implemented that we need to do away with. If you're not a person who understands that, or someone who's even had a conversation with anyone who's experienced it, I think this is one of those moments where you can shut up. And I hate to say that. I almost never say that. But I feel that way about the people who go and complain with their keyboard warrioring, who have no concept of what it means, and will simply say, well, now we're breaking, rules of war as opposed to laws of war, as opposed to actually just keeping people safer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as many of our listeners know, one of the other things I do is veteran oral history interviews. And you talk to these guys from Iraq and Afghanistan, but even Vietnam, going close to 60 years ago now. And you get to that topic of rules of engagement, and you can see the emotion very quickly come to the surface because of what they had to go through, what they barely survived, and many times what their friends did not, because the politicians decided they didn't want to deal with the fallout and the possible controversy instead of putting the troops in the best possibility and the best possible position. So hopefully this is implemented smoothly and effectively, and the military is stronger than ever.
We'll see about that part, but who knows?
Yeah, it's not easy. Big changes. So most of those guys, if they're a little overweight, probably were still thinking about the conditioning drill that they're going to have to go through and panicking a little bit. But he did say, if you don't like where we're going, you can resign, and we'll thank you for your service. I don't know if anybody's going to do that, though. But all right, let's talk about a great new sponsor. First introduced yesterday, Mizzen and Main. Once again today, wearing a brand new shirt from Mizzen and Main. Feels light and very, very comfortable. This is kind of a button down, it's either navy or black. It's hard to tell exactly, but feels great, looks great. And that's kind of what the Mizzen and Main mantra is. You know the saying, look good, feel good. The problem is most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They often look sharp, but they're stiff or they're hot and they're high maintenance. You got to take them to the cleaners all the time. So it's hard to feel comfortable. But Mizzen and Main is different. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. Mizzen and Main actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and since then, they've perfected it with modern fabrics. Mizzen and Main's shirts and pants look refined, yet they're stretchy, lightweight, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and completely machine washable. No ironing or dry cleaning necessary. That's really good. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com, promo code 3ML20 for 20% off. mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. All right, Craig, on to our bad Martini now. And even though Jim's not here today, we still have him with us in spirit and in print.
Yes, we do.
Because just yesterday, before he headed off on his latest excursion, which you'll learn more about when he gets back, but he was focusing on young communists and how that's really becoming the reality on the young left these days. The headline is, America's young communists really believe true communism has never been tried. He highlights a Wall Street Journal story reporting on young socialists who are fueling the Democratic Party's lurch to the left in recent years. They trace it all back to the Great Recession. And I mean, it's just funny if it weren't so serious to look at this story. It says, on a recent evening, this is the Journal now, 15 comrades from the Northwest Philadelphia cell of the Revolutionary Communists of America gathered for their weekly meeting. The mostly 20 and 30-somethings had eschewed the Mao caps and the Che Guevara t-shirts of previous generations. Soon, though, terms like ruling class, parasitic, bourgeoisie, and dialectic were bandied about the room as they settled into an earnest discussion of the assigned reading an article entitled Morality and the Class Struggle. And references to the 2008 crisis were also plentiful. And so they basically see the system as stacked against them. And so that's the capitalist system that didn't work in that situation. And they've had a hard time, succeeding ever since then. Craig, it's hard to see exactly how that leads from one to the other. You can be upset with, the subprime lending crisis and
Sure.
the government ignoring that back there in the mid-2000s. But, they still say, the communism hadn't worked anywhere in the world yet because it hasn't been attempted, at least not yet. I think it's been attempted a lot of times, and usually what you get is stacks of dead bodies.
Yeah, you get a lot of horrible things. You get stifled speech. You get, a bunch of people in positions of power having a whole bunch of the money. What's funny about this to me, and it's weird to try to make some of this funny, but I can't help it. It's who I am. The funniest thing about this is it feels like the people who read the headline and then none of the article just played out in a different way. Because if these young people think, oh, communism sounds great because this is fair or that is fair, they're reading the headline, the version where they think the thing will occur that they hope will occur. They're not thinking about all the steps that happen after the fact that make it a horrible, terrible decision, as we know time and again, and as we've seen time and again, and as people from all different other countries throughout the world would tell them if they cared to ask. So I really think this is more an indictment of the arrogance of young people, or the arrogance of people who assume they know a lot when they know very little, as opposed to anything else here. But I do also think it's interesting that people would advocate for some of what we're seeing in places like New York City or anywhere else, because it is handing power to individuals who may be craving it for exactly the reasons that terrify the rest of us. It's exactly the thing they also claim about Trump or anyone else when they say that this person is abusing this in this way. They'll essentially enable the thing that they claim to most fear. So it's terrifying, but at the same time, to me, amusing, because I like watching stupid people say stupid things.
Yeah, and these are the same people who supported Hamas over
Right.
Israel, that 18 to 29 demographic, and even the 30 to mid 40s was pretty dicey on some of those numbers. Hopefully they've improved since then, but I don't think they've improved a ton. Craig, at this point, the Cold War officially ended with the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. The Berlin Wall came down in 1989. And I just feel like we've done a horrible job of teaching younger people what was happening during the Cold War, why communism was bad, the USSR, the genocide going on in Cambodia, and what was happening in with the Vietnam War, the purge in China, where tens of millions were killed, Joseph Stalin, on and on and on, and Castro and Che Guevara. Che Guevara somehow becomes a hero, even though he spent most of his time annihilating people. So on the college campus, I kind of get it. It's been lefties since the 1960s, and for the most part, you're going to get that. But even earlier than that, high school and before that, we had a duty to educate young people about why winning the Cold War was essential, why the Soviet model was a disaster, and I feel like we've dropped the ball immensely.
No, I think we definitely have. What's interesting? Something I keep thinking about as we're talking about this is Charlie Kirk, the late, great Charlie Kirk, because he would go to college campuses and he would say the thing you said to shift the opinion of some people on the left, which was that, it's difficult to buy a house right now. Yes, this is a challenge. That's a challenge. If you're a younger person looking for a good job, you're overeducated and underqualified for the positions you most want. When all of those, problems, all of those issues hit you at the same time, you might assume it'd be great if a big, nice government just gave you free stuff. You might think that that would work out better for you, and it doesn't. And it's horrible. And as you said, it's really an issue of not educating people, because I would watch those interviews or those, arguments on college campuses with Charlie Kirk and young people, and they would expose themselves for how little they actually know of history or how little they care. The other shocking thing is when you argue with some people, they seem to not care that you're proving them wrong. They put their fingers in their ears and ignore, because how dare you say stuff that has facts that back up the fact that what I'm saying isn't true and what I'm saying is a bad idea. I want to try it. Let's go ahead and do it and see how bad it goes. And it would go horrible.
Exactly. And the media, of course, loves the left, so they're going along with
do.
it. Look at how they've shifted on Mamdani in New York City. The only reason they were skeptical at first was because they thought his radicalism might cost him the election. Now that he seems to be in position to win, more and more Democrats are coming on board. If he gets elected, I'm sure the media is going to love him until it becomes absolutely impossible to ignore the evidence. So who knows how quickly that'll be, but I don't think it'll be that long. But just the fawning over and over again, despite obvious examples in history, is infuriating.
You know what it also is, real quick, before I know we got to move on to the last one. I do think what's interesting about a lot of this is how you overplay they just want everything to work out okay. They're just sweet and naive, a version of an excuse. I feel like a lot of people in media would say that behind closed doors. We're covering it this way because we know they have good intentions, even if some of the things they're saying demonstrate that they're not knowledgeable or demonstrate that they're barreling us toward a terrible place. It's that excusing of behavior that Pete Hegseth is not okay with anymore as the director of war, the secretary of war. So I think this is the kind of thing that we do need to not only educate but also offend some people along the way by demonstrating that they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, they really don't. And where they get their news from or get their ideas from matters as well, which we'll talk about in the final Martini. But in the meantime, how did you sleep last night? Hopefully you slept great. Hopefully you had a full night's rest and you're very, very comfortable. But were you as comfortable as you could be? Because Boll and Branch is about as comfortable as you can get when it comes to your bed sheets. And so if you've ever thought about changing your bedding to align with the seasons, or you just want sheets to get softer and softer with each wash, imagine that, softer with each wash, Boll and Branch is definitely the way to go. We love them. Mrs. Columbus and I absolutely love the Boll and Branch sheets, not only because they're soft, not only because they get softer with each wash, but also because they've got those deep pockets. So no matter how big your mattress is, they actually get through those bottom corners of your mattress and they don't start popping off all the time like some other sheets. And so when it comes to Boll and Branch, they are so soft to start and they get softer with each wash. They're breathable to sleep in, so you can add more layers without making your bed feel hot or heavy. And they're made with the highest quality 100% organic cotton in durable designs. So start building your sanctuary of comfort this fall with Boll and Branch. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets plus free shipping at bollandbranch.com/3martini. Spell that all out, 3martini. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/3martini to save 20% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions do apply. All right, Craig, on to our final Martini. Could be crazy. I think it's pretty crazy. New numbers from Pew Research show that 20% of U.S. adults overall now regularly get their news from TikTok, which is up 3% from 2020. But among the youngest adults, once again, we're in that 18 to 29 group,
right?
43% now regularly get their news there, up from 9% in 2020. So that is a massive shift. So just to go through the numbers here, overall, again, 20%, that 18 to 29, 43%, 30 to 49, 25%. Then it kind of falls off a cliff. 50 to 64 is at 10%, and 65 plus is at 3%. They're not going to deal with that newfangled TikTok thing, especially since it's Chinese spyware anyway, or at least for the immediate future. We'll see what happens with this deal that's coming up if it goes through. So, Craig, you and I were talking about this before we got started today, and social media can be as valuable to you as you let it be. So I use Twitter, I guess X now, a lot, and it's about who you follow, both the news sources and the people commenting on it. You can get a responsible and quick update on the news events. But if you're just kind of letting the regular stream come in, especially with TikTok and whatever Chinese influence is happening there, you get a very skewed idea of what's happening, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's about China itself, whether it's about the current administration, whatever it is. You've got to be very careful about how you curate that news.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that that's the most important part. And this is the Martini glass is half full version of a discussion about it, is absolutely you can get effective news from places like TikTok and Twitter. You can get good news, reliable news from independent journalists who want to tell you the truth, who don't want to, curate the information in some way that harms you. You can also get a whole load of crap, like a significant load of terrible, terrible things. So I think that's the one part that is missing when people discuss this, is that you could effectively be well informed on the news of the day by going just to TikTok, but it would be very difficult. You'd have to curate it quite well, as you say, Greg. You'd have to put a lot of effort into it, which we assume most people who get all of their news from social media are not doing. They're not doing anything like that. They follow this one person they like, and then that person wields a unique, significant, role in their life and what they tell them and what they don't tell them. So I think it's interesting. I'm not going to bash young people as much about this as the other stuff and communism and whatnot, though, because I do think that it demonstrates how unreliable regular mainstream media has become, how dishonest it is, how biased it is, and how most people no longer want it. Even people that agree with it, I would rather see news in a different place because they want to make sure the thing they're getting is something that they actually believe is true. And so it's more of an indictment of the news industry, in my opinion, than the young people and where they go. Although, don't believe everything you see on TikTok feels like a valuable thing to say.
Yeah, exactly. And you also need to, again, follow the actual accounts. If you're into, reels on Facebook or TikTok's basically the same way, and you're just mindlessly scrolling up, it's basically a reinforcement mechanism to whatever you believe you're going to get more of. Whatever you linger on, because, oh, that's an interesting thought, you're going to get like 3, 5, 7 more of the exact same thing. And Charlie Kirk is a perfect example of this, because after Charlie Kirk passed away, I was getting tons of those types of videos, and they were all very positive, showing how effective Charlie Kirk was. People who are on the left and don't like Charlie Kirk, they were getting fed all sorts of, in many cases, edited out of context videos, I would say. But regardless of what do you think of Charlie Kirk, they were getting very negative ones, and it just reinforces. So you've got to be careful to get out there and follow sources that will give you the best and most reliable information. And if you find that certain people out there consistently don't, mute them, unfollow them, block them, whatever you have to do to make sure you're not getting fooled by what they're saying.
Part. It's so funny whenever anybody talks about Google or anything else. Facebook is a great example of this. That confirmation bias stuff creeps in, and it's the goal of these media companies, these social media companies, to keep you there watching their stuff and scrolling through and seeing their ads. So yeah, they'll absolutely feed you what you agree with, because you'll linger longer than if they feed you what you disagree with. So just knowing that mechanism is in place is very powerful, as Greg points out, and I think that's an important part of the version of finding a way to use TikTok, use Twitter effectively. But also, and probably the most important thing, is that if someone lies to you once, have it be 1 strike and you're out, not 3. Move on to someone. There's so many other sources that you can choose from and check out, that you don't have to rely on that one person you like because, his co-host is a hot chick or whatever it is that they do now. I don't know how they do it, Greg, now, but you don't have to. You can move on just like we have for mainstream media.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, well, Craig, it's been great to have you today.
Yeah.
For those who are watching, Craig is all decked out in his Yankees gear because the baseball playoffs start today. My Cubs host the Padres. His Yankees host the Red Sox. No pressure with that rivalry being part of the playoffs now. So I know you're excited, even though you hate the format.
Yeah, I do think that the bad Martini should have been how ridiculous it is that the baseball playoffs have so many teams in them now. But that's fine. I'll save that for some other podcast, some other time. Go Yankees, go Aaron Judge. Be good in October, Aaron Judge, and all will be forgiven. Just be good one time, Aaron.
That's all you need. That's all you need. Craig, great to have you in here for Jim
Thanks,
today.
Craig.
Appreciate your time.
Cool.
Craig Collins, radio host and podcaster. He subs for Dana Lash, Chad Benson, and he subbed for me here on the 3 Martini Lunch. Thanks so much for being with us today. I'm, of course, Greg Columbus from Radio America. If you haven't subscribed yet to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast, please do so. And tell your friends about us. We'd love to have them listening as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us all on X. Jim is at Jim Geraghty. I'm at Greg Corombos. Craig, what's your Twitter handle?
At Radio Craig C.
At Radio Craig C. There you go. Have a great Tuesday. Join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.